Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is going to leave you shaking your head and maybe even questioning humanity just a little bit. Ever heard of someone being so entitled they literally lose a finger over it? Yeah, buckle up, because this one's a wild ride. All right, so I own a small woodworking shop in a quiet little town. Been here for almost 10 years now. I'm Jim, by the way. Been doing this kind of work for over 30 years. And let me tell you, I've seen some stuff. This place is my pride and joy. Everything in here is crafted by hand, from tables to chairs to little knickknacks that I whip up right in the shop. People come by just to watch me work sometimes. And it's kind of cool, you know? Feels good to share the craft. Now, most of the time, it's just me working alone, surrounded by the smell of freshly cut wood and the sound of saws and sanders humming away. There's a cozy feel to it, like stepping into a world where things are still made with care and patience. I always make sure safety comes first, especially with my little power saw out back. That thing's kept locked up behind a chain fence with a safety cover when I'm not using it. The last thing I need is someone getting hurt. But one day and everything changed. So I'm working on this small coffee table when the door swings open, and in she walks. Middle-aged lady, dressed way too fancy for a dusty little wood shop like mine, marches straight to the counter. She's got this attitude like she owns the place, and honestly, I could already tell she was trouble. You know the type, chin up, voice loud, like the world revolves around her. She plops down this big old slab of wood on my workbench and goes, "I need this cut into perfect little squares, exact measurements, right now." Okay, first off, cutting something that precise isn't exactly quick and easy, especially not with my hand tools here at the shop. I tried to explain it to her, told her I'd have to take it to my workshop at home where I've got better equipment for detailed work. I even mentioned I'd need to close the shop early to make it happen. And what does she do? Starts fuming, like full-on red in the face, telling me that's just not good enough and I have to do it right then and there. I was trying to stay calm, but she just wouldn't let up. "This is ridiculous. You call this customer service?" Then she drops the bomb, says she's gonna get me fired if I don't do what she wants. I almost laughed out loud. Fired? Lady, I own this place. But whatever. I just shrugged and let her storm out, muttering threats about how I'd regret it. Little did I know, that would be the last normal day I'd have for a long time. Stick around, because what happened next is downright insane. All right, so that was just the beginning. You'd think the story ends with Karen storming out, right? Nope, that woman wasn't done with me yet, not by a long shot. The next morning I get to the shop early, just like always. The sun's barely up, and the air's still got that crisp, cool feel to it. I'm just about to unlock the front door when I hear it, this god-awful scream from around the back. I swear it sounded like someone was being murdered. My heart's pounding out of my chest, and I rush over to see what's going on. And then I freeze. Right there on the ground is Karen, sitting in a puddle of her own blood, holding her hand to her chest and screaming like a banshee. Her face is pale as a ghost, and her whole body's shaking. I'm trying to process what the heck I'm looking at when I see it. The little power saw behind her, still running. The safety cover's been ripped off, and the chain fence that's always up to block the area. It's been pulled down. My stomach drops, because right there on the ground is a severed finger, just lying in a little pool of blood. My brain's spinning, trying to make sense of it. How the hell did she even get in there? And why was she messing with my saw? I take a breath, try to stay calm, and walk a little closer, just enough to make out what she's mumbling between sobs. "This is your fault. You did this to me." Her eyes lock onto mine, and she's pointing that bloody stump of a finger in my direction, like I personally chopped it off. I'm just stunned. Can't even form a sentence. "I told you I needed that wood cut. If you weren't so lazy, I wouldn't have had to do it myself." Wait, what? She actually broke into my shop, messed with my equipment, and now she's blaming me because she hacked her own damn finger off? Unbelievable. I finally snap out of it and yank out my phone to call 911. My hands are shaking as I explain to the dispatcher that some lady's just cut her finger off with my saw. Yeah, that's a fun conversation. Meanwhile, Karen's still shrieking and cussing me out, like it's all my fault. Within minutes, the paramedics show up, along with the cops. One of the EMTs wraps her hand while the other looks around the scene, clearly confused. I tell them what I know, which isn't much, just that I found her like this when I got here. Karen, of course, is still going off about how I forced her to use the saw. She's yelling that I set her up and did it on purpose to make her look stupid. The cop looks at me, raising an eyebrow, and I just shrug. Because honestly, what can I even say? It's like logic doesn't exist in her world. One of the officers asks Karen how she got inside, but she dodges the question, just keeps ranting about how I refused to do my job and she had to take matters into her own hands. They pull me aside to get a clearer picture, and I walk them through yesterday, how she came in demanding precision cuts that I couldn't do on site, and how she left cussing me out when I didn't comply. The cop takes notes, glancing over at Karen every now and then, while she's still half screaming, half crying. Finally, they start examining the saw itself, and that's when they notice it. The safety cover's been yanked off, and there are clear signs that someone messed with the lock on the chain fence. I can see it in their eyes. The realization that Karen didn't just hurt herself. She went out of her way to break in and tamper with my equipment. One of the officers gives me a nod, like he knows this isn't on me. Relief washes over me, but it's mixed with pure disbelief at how far Karen went to prove a point. And right then, I knew this was about to turn into a full-blown investigation. Little did I know, the craziest part was still yet to come. The paramedics are busy tending to Karen's bloody mess of a hand, but the cops? They're not buying her story for 1 second. One of the officers pulls me aside, asking me to walk him through exactly how I found her and what went down the day before. I can see him piecing it all together in his head, and he's got that look, the one that says, "This lady's full of it." While I'm explaining, Karen's over there still ranting and raving like a madwoman. She's saying stuff like, "He set me up. He wanted this to happen. That saw shouldn't even be there. It's his fault." The cop just looks at her like he's dealing with a toddler throwing a tantrum. He glances at me and asks, "Is the saw normally locked up?" I nod. "Always. The safety cover stays on, and the chain fence is locked every night. I don't even touch it without double-checking." The officer looks back at Karen, his eyebrow raised. "Ma'am, how exactly did you get back here? The shop wasn't open yet." She hesitates, for the first time since this circus started. Then she doubles down. "He left it unlocked. I just walked in. If he hadn't been so lazy yesterday, I wouldn't have had to do it myself." But I know that's not true, and so do the cops. They take a closer look at the chain fence and spot what I noticed earlier. The lock's been forced open, and the safety cover is pried right off. One of the officers sighs, clearly annoyed. They pull out their notepads, documenting the damage and taking pictures of the scene. Meanwhile, Karen's still sitting there, now sobbing hysterically, like she's trying to make herself look like the victim. But it's too late. They're not buying it. One cop walks up to me and says, "We're going to need you to come down to the station to make a statement. You're not in trouble. We just need your account on record." As they load Karen into the ambulance, she's still screaming about how it's all my fault, how I should have just done my job, how I'm going to pay for this. The officer just shakes his head, muttering something about how people like her are a nightmare. Down at the station, they go through everything, ask about my business, my safety protocols, and every little detail about my interactions with Karen. Luckily, I've got it all down to a science. Safety is my #1 rule. They seem satisfied with my answers, nodding and taking notes. After a few hours of back and forth, one of the detectives finally tells me the truth. "We've already checked surveillance footage from the area. You're clear. It's obvious she broke in and tampered with your equipment. If anything, you're the victim here." Hearing that, man, the relief just washes over me. I guess Karen didn't realize that the small bakery next door has security cameras facing my back entrance. They caught everything. Karen messing with the lock, yanking off the safety cover. The whole ugly scene. Turns out, Karen's got a bit of a reputation in town. She's been banned from a few stores for causing trouble, but nothing this extreme. The cops are planning to charge her with trespassing, vandalism, and reckless endangerment. They even mentioned the possibility of pressing charges for damages to my equipment. Before I leave, one of the officers pats me on the shoulder. "Don't worry about her coming back. We'll make sure she's dealt with. And you've got every right to ban her from your shop for life." I leave the station feeling exhausted, but relieved. Finally, where it feels like the nightmare's over. But guess what? I'd be dead wrong about that. Because even after all this, she wasn't done with me yet. So, you'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Karen gets caught breaking in, nearly saws her own finger off, gets charged with trespassing and vandalism. Case closed. But oh no, that woman just couldn't let it go. A week after the whole mess, I'm back at the shop, trying to put it behind me, when guess who shows up? Yep, Karen, bandaged hand and all. She's standing outside, pounding on the door like she's on some righteous crusade. I don't even bother opening up. Just pull out my phone and call the cops. Again. Turns out she's been harassing other businesses around town, screaming about how unfair it all is and trying to rally support. Nobody's buying it, especially after news spread about how she literally broke into my shop and nearly cut her own finger off. By the time the cops get there, she's yelling at me through the window, calling me a coward and a liar. One of the officers just waves at me like, "We got this." They haul her off for the second time, and that's the last I ever saw of her. Honestly, I couldn't help but feel kind of bad for her. I mean, imagine being so desperate to be right. You're willing to risk losing a finger just to prove a point. That's next level stubbornness right there. And the lesson here? Sometimes, no matter how hard you try to keep things safe and straightforward, some people will always find a way to screw themselves over. You can't fix stupid, but you sure as heck can protect yourself from it. I've since installed even more safety locks and put up extra signs, not because I expect any more crazy Karens, but because once you've dealt with one, you never want to risk it again. All right, folks, that's it for today's wild ride. Let me know what you think in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? And hey, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next insane story. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe out there.